Hi everybody, it's Mr. Stevens back again with Son of the Morning Star, Custer and the Little Bighorn by Evan S. Connell, and we are going to jump right back in where we left off, and that was regarding Benteen's trial. His trial began February 2nd, 1887. Mr. S.D. Cotton, citizen, being duly sworn, testified that on the infamous 11th of November, he and Mr. L. Johnson walked into the sutler's store and encountered Colonel Benteen, his brevet rank at the time. Colonel Benteen had been drinking freely, said Mr. Cotton, and got into a quarrel with Mr. Johnson, using some pretty hard language. Nevertheless, Benteen insisted upon buying drinks for those two citizens. Mr. Johnson then attempted to return the compliment and tossed out $1, whereupon Benteen said, quote, "I believe you denied being a Mormon, Mr. Johnson," to which Mr. Johnson replied that he was mistaken. "You are a goddamn liar," Benteen said. "You did deny it to me. Some think I came here to fight Indians, but I came here to fight Mormons." Furthermore, according to Mr. Cotton's testimony, Colonel Benteen said, "I'll make the Star-Spangled Banner float over all your heads before I get through with you." The two citizens then walked out of the sutler's establishment. About an hour later, Benteen located them and tried to apologize, but it did not go well. "I think you're both goddamn Mormons," he said, "and the Mormons are a set of goddamn sons of bitches." This enraged Mr. Cotton, who got ready to fight. He took off his overcoat and called Benteen a liar, at which Benteen peeled down to his shirt, threw off his suspenders, rolled up his sleeves, and was ready to go when a lieutenant managed to separate them. "He kept on abusing me," Mr. Cotton testified, "calling me all the goddamn sons of bitches he could lay his tongue to until I left. I realized, of course, that he was drunk, or he would not talk to me that way, for he had always treated me as well as any gentleman I could wish to meet. But he was very drunk then. I saw him that afternoon, but did not speak to him. They was taking him home." The court asked about the state of the accused man's clothing during his altercation. "He had his cap off," Mr. Cotton answered, "his coat down off to his shirt sleeves, and his breeches down halfway over his hips. He was staggering around as drunk as a man could be, and stand on his pegs." Mr. L. Johnson then came before the court. Being duly sworn, he testified that his name was Lycurgus Johnson, resident of Ashley, Unitah County, Utah, whose occupation was varied. Did he know the accused? Yes. Had he seen the accused at the trader's store on or about November 11th? Yes. Being asked to state anything unusual that occurred on this date, he verified the testimony of his friend Mr. Cotton, including the remark about the Star-Spangled Banner. He stated also that he had observed Benteen later in the day. "I see them taking him home. I don't know whether it was home. It was in a direction southeast." J.W. Vanderhoof, citizen, carpenter, and resident of Sidney, Nebraska, testified for the prosecution that he had observed the accused staggering about, quote, "using language that no gentleman would use unless under the influences of liquor." Mr. Vanderhoof testified that the citizen who entered the trader's establishment were ordered by the accused to hit the breeze. He told the court that the accused had gotten into an argument with Mr. Isaac Cummins, who, upon being ordered to leave, stepped behind a coal stove. Then the accused discovered him, said Vanderhoof, and, quote, pointed a finger to him and said, "There stands the son of a bitch behind the stove," he said. "Boys," speaking to no one specifically, "give me a revolver and I'll make the son of a bitch of a Mormon pull his freight." Mr. William Thies, citizen, resident at Fort Duchesne, who gave his occupation as roustabout, also testified for the prosecution. Did he recognize the accused? Yes. Did he see the accused on or about November 11th? Yes. Quote, "I seen him down at the place where I'm employed. At that time I was cooking for the Post Trader. The place where I saw him was down at the cookhouse." Being asked to relate the circumstances, Mr. Thies stated that shortly after 5 o'clock, Major Benteen arrived for supper. He was intoxicated. Did the witness hold any conversations with the accused? Yes. The accused asked the witness his name. Upon being told, "William Thies," the accused continued to ask the same question. "I answered him 3 or 4 times. He was almost through his supper. Then he fell from his chair. Whether it was done by accident, I don't know. For supper I gave him eggs. They were boiled soft, and they run down his beard." After the accused fell off his chair, inquired the court, what did the accused do? Mr. Thies stated that the accused, quote, broke part of his pants open. I presume it was by accident, as this was the first I saw of it. He fell on the floor, and as I say before, the front part of his pants unbuttoned, or broke open. He did not get right up. He lay there for a matter of 2 or 3 minutes. How did the witness happen to observe the disordered condition of the pants of the accused? Mr. Thies replied that it would be natural to observe this. Did the accused at any time improperly expose any part of his person? Not that I know of. No, sir. A transcript of the court-martial notes that the accused declined to cross-examine the witness. The court also heard testimony from a certain Miss Bailey, who was chatting with several other ladies in Colonel Benteen's tent when he approached in an intoxicated condition, addressing her as follows. Your husband must have had a hell of a time with you. Mrs. Bailey responded by asking what he meant. He next made some reference to her eyes. His words were repeated differently by different witnesses, after which there was no doubt about what he did. He stepped outside and pissed on the tent very close to where the ladies were sitting. We all heard it, testified Captain J. A. Olmsted. Miss Violet Norman was called to testify on behalf of the accused. Being asked if she recognized the accused, she replied that she did. He was her uncle. Being directly questioned by the accused as to his condition at the time of the reputed insult to Miss Bailey, Miss Norman answered, You had been drinking some, was rather talkative, but was not, in my opinion, drunk. Being asked to give her recollection of the incident, she stated to the court, Colonel Benteen was joking with Mrs. Bailey about her eyes, and I remember his having said to her that any woman with such eyes must be a holy terror. I think that was the only thing said about the matter, and was said in pleasantry, and taken as such by Mrs. Bailey, for they had been joking, and were joking for some time after that. Did Colonel Benteen escort Mrs. Bailey to and from supper? He did. What were the relations between Mrs. Bailey and the accused? They were very pleasant. Mrs. Bailey came out almost every day to walk with me, and we were very frequently joined by Colonel Benteen, and I never saw anything that was contrary. At the time of the alleged insult, did anything occur which would offend the taste of the most fastidious person? There was nothing of the kind. The testimony of Miss Violet Norman was read aloud by Judge Advocate, and Miss Norman pronounced it correctly recorded. The most eloquent defense of the accused seems to have come from Benteen himself in the form of a lengthy document entitled Exhibit H, being further statements of F.W. Benteen submitted in writing. Much of it is dull, but now and then, aggrieved by all these slanderous insinuations, he responds with fairly senatorial wrath in regard to Captain Olmsted. Quote, Why, gentlemen, this man Olmsted broods over fancies until he believes them to be facts, and then he propagates them as facts. This is well known in the 9th Cavalry, and such a man's testimony cannot, is not, allowed to be impeached by the court. This officer is not prejudiced against me, but when asked whether he is, says no, and then proceeds to inject all the virus that his little syringe will hold by dragging in an occurrence as antique as the spring of 1884, which, if the facts were told by disinterested witnesses, would redound to my credit, and he was known as a Benteen man. Thank God, gentlemen, that there are not many as such, or I could truly say, save me from my friends. I should think it an insult for a man like that to take my part, for he has not a single idea of his own. They are all reflected. Benteen is not through with Olmsted. He summarizes a conversation alleged to have taken place between himself and a Mr. Lorenzo Hatch, during which he, Benteen, told Olmsted to keep his damned nose out of his business. Gentlemen, I neither refer to his nose or his damn nose, but I can inform him of one thing, that I will pull it for him if I ever hear of his meddling with anything that concerns me or mine again. This man is a dangerous man, and I regret that I did not find out sooner. Concerning the charge of drunkenness on a particular day, Benteen remembers it well. He was in the sutler's tent, quote, And though I had drank some during the afternoon, principally ginger ale, I had caught cold, my spine being bent, so that I could not stand erect, and on going towards home, I called Lieutenant Steyer's attention to this fact, asking him if I did not appear somewhat as the man in Joe Jefferson's Rip Van Winkle, who is carrying the keg up to the skittle players in the Catskills. As for those damaging witnesses, S.D. Cotton and Lycurgus Johnson, they are not worthy of belief. Benteen knows them. A pity the court does not. Quote, I've heard enough more of them to make one's hair stand on end, and one of the stories was that Johnson let his poor old mother drown, as she was an incumbents, but had ample time to save the horses while crossing a swollen river. Oh yes, he continues, admonishing those who must decide his fate. Quote, I know too well what subtle poison has been diligently and assiduously poured into your ears of the members of this court by my detractors. And in a rolling summation which opens with the first shots fired at Fort Sumter, he explains how he came to be where he is. To a Southerner whose father and family were, quote, Calhounists of the ultra stamp, where states' rights and nullification were among the earliest remembered work, it became no easy matter to answer the Union call, to rush with fixed bayonet upon brother, father, home, friends, and companions. Quote, Such, gentlemen, was the predicament I was in, living in Missouri, when the rally around the flag was being sounded in clarion tones by the loyal people of the country. The fruit of the Civil War he called a harvest of barren regrets, although the Union prevailed. Afterward he felt obligated to provide a home for his widowed sister and her 3 infant daughters, as well as a home for the widow and 3 children of his brother, who had fallen from a scaffolding in 1882. His aged, Yankee-hating father, too, depended on him. So, in 1887, he wrote, reminding the court that those small children now were grown, with children of their own, quote, And their little children clamor to rest on the knees of the soldier uncle, and every night from their little bedsides the prayers of those prattlers are offered up to the divine being to protect, care for, and bless their dear old soldier uncle, and that their childish wishes will be heeded in due time by our Maker, the great Grand Master. I verily believe them. I truly know that there is nothing so dear to all their childish hearts as the wish to be just such a man as they think their dear old uncle to be. To no avail, this majestic defense. The court did not find him guilty of indecent exposure, nor of drunkenness on 3 of the specified days, but of the substantial drunkenness, as well as conduct unbecoming of an officer and a gentleman, he was guilty. Quote, And the court does therefore sentence him, Major Frederick W. Benteen, 9th U.S. Cavalry, to be dismissed from the United States military service. A document superscribed Headquarters Public of the Platte, dated March 11th, 1887, states that the proceedings, findings, and sentence have been approved and are forwarded to the President with a recommendation that if, in view of Major Benteen's past record, clemency should be extended to him, he should be somehow disciplined, quote, for his insubordinate and disrespectful language and his unsoldier-like conduct as shown in these proceedings, indicating as they do that he is sadly in need of such discipline. Signed, George Crook, Brigadier General. Crook's respectful hint that clemency be extended was echoed by his superior and former West Point roommate, Little Phil Sheridan. President Cleveland took their word for it. Benteen was suspended from rank and duty for 1 year at half pay. He served this penitential year in Atlanta, where he had been stationed at the conclusion of the Civil War and where he decided to live. And we will stop there for the day. I hope you guys are still enjoying it, and I do apologize that there was some profane language in that one. Those were all quotes from General Benteen. But for right now, we will stop. We will pick up the book where we left off in the next video. I hope you guys are still enjoying it, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys.